So good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. And the topic is on quality processes as part of the device development suite license to Cure. So this is the third session in the series. So we started off beginning of November with an introduction to the suites with under the heading Bridging Innovation and Compliance, where we introduced the topic and provided an overview of what's the scope of license to cure, which processes are supported and why, and especially emphasizing how we are bridging innovation and compliance through license to cure as part of a PLM suite. Last week, the focus was on design controls. So it's the representation of the build-up of a project, both, of course, the standard task execution and project execution, but also the build-up of the design history file. The previous sessions you have available on the on our website under the License to Cure webinars. So if we have a look at the website, it's under this heading and events, and then you'll come to this webinar series. And if you follow this further down, you will see the different movies added to this page as we proceed. So at any time, you can view the old webinars and or the previous webinars. And of course, also this session will be recorded and available immediately after our session here today. So let's proceed with the topic of the day, which is quality assurance, or I would say the quality processes. So where we were, I want to stress these parts, which is really the foundation of license to cure and the foundation for PLM for device development. The first item here is the one version of the truth on the product. The second ring here is the updated and one version of the truth of the compliance status. And the third item is the updated view on the project to know exactly where are we at the time being. So this is what our solutions center around. This is the essence when we introduce PLM for device development. What we'll focus on today are quality processes, and we picked up some selected processes, I'd say. So we'll follow a scenario, which is a cross-functional scenario. Pretty typical for quality processes. So it's starting in a complaints registration, and due to the urgency of the complaint, we are performing a more detailed investigation, and at some point in time we'll of course, due to the urgency, we'll introduce an event report, an MDR, but we will also decide to issue a CAPA, so a more detailed analysis on the issue and, of course, how to prevent it in the future. We will take the CAPA through the organization, which of course will cover the detailed analysis, but also the qualification with regards to available resources and skills. On item number 5, the typical topics of the CAPA the initial risk analysis, suggestion on an action plan, together with the root, or based on the root cause analysis, which is the start of the detailed investigation. The root cause is finished with a conclusion on the CAPA, with the final tasks in the action plan. But typically, the CAPA of this magnitude will launch an ordinary engineering change, which typically will involve both regulatory changes having an impact for manufacturing engineers, for design engineers, for component engineers or supply engineers. So it has an enterprise-wide impact. Since we're in a controlled environment, some of the changes, for example, the SOP, will have to go through an implementation scenario. These are control documents, so of course they'll go through the routines for the approval as part of the change, but they will also go through the routines of implementation. So we will follow up typically on trainings on the updated change, make sure that those trainings are followed up and executed and implemented. And when that is done, we are, in the end, we'll be able to complete the CAPA, and with that also close the initial complaint and provide the feedback to the final chain in the events here. So it can be quite an extensive scenario, but it touches upon some of the critical quality processes, and I hope we'll give you an idea of what and why would we want to introduce the quality processes as part of the PLM suites. We won't, of course, not cover the complete scenario. It won't be enough time for that. Before going into the different parts, which I'd like to highlight, I'll also like to give an overview of the product which we're looking at. So I'll go out of the presentation, I'll go out of the environment, and I'll give you a brief introduction movie. So this movie will, let's see if we can, it's an automated external defibrillator. So it's have its cover. It's fully represented in a device development project. It's fully represented in our CAD design. So the cover is a custom design, while the contents consists of standard components. So that's a quick introduction. We've been running the product in production for some time. So it's had its initial release on the market, and it's been out on the market. Accordingly, we're capturing complaints on the product continuously through hotlines or through different channels. So going back to our scenario here, we will initially look at the different complaints which we have collected. Essential there is to understand the complaints when they come in, do proper qualification and grouping of complaints, but also it's essential to capture the complaints in a proper way. PLM and the qualification of the complaints here is one way to view the complaints, but obviously they might be captured initially through a CRM system or some other existing tool in our organization. And successful complaints implementation is really to capture the complaints in an efficient manner and do a proper organization. And then, of course, channel it through the organization to not overload the quality organization and have efficient trending mechanisms and action follow-up to make sure that the complaints are taken care of in a timely manner and efficient manner. So we'll start off with an overview of those complaints. Then we go to the initial investigation, and there we follow a fairly standard complaints assessment. For regulatory reasons and for validation reasons, one of the first steps is to make sure that we return the products, if it's a production product or a batch, whatever it is, from the customer or from the patient, to make sure that we have a good representation of what was returned. Also, it's important that we, if possible, can trace it down to the batch or the unit which we're using for our analysis. The third step is the typical work of a design engineer and perhaps junior or senior design engineer, perhaps a manufacturing engineer, and it's to understand should we take this forward? Is it misuse or is it a malfunction? What is the reason for the complaint, and is it qualified? From or parallel with that, it also goes to the safety and regulatory lead. Typically what they would like to do is to determine the urgency of the event, and based on that decide how should this be reported to the regulatory authorities, on which markets, in which forms, and what's the reportability, how soon could they be expected to be launched. The system has templates for the different reports, so it populates the PDF files from the European or the Canadian or the US organizations, populate that with the information on the complaints and the details on the products directly from the system, and it provides the tools to electronically submit the forms. So I get the complete tool set for initially the qualification, if a form is required, if it requires to be reported, and then it's the actual submission which is sent to the regulatory authorities. After that, in step 4, we have to make up our mind. Should we launch a COPPA? And someone will launch the COPPA request as preparation, and then either a product manager or a program manager together with a quality lead will try out the skill sets and set up or propose an appropriate team, try out those resources against existing projects, perhaps review the design controls to understand the intended use, to understand the background on the product, and then it's submitted as any change or new development project, where tasks are submitted to the complete organization. The important step there is the connection from the COPPA to other related processes in the organization, and that could be any input on the product complexity, the processes, or the quality systems. So it's automatic detection of relevant complaints trending, relevant NCRs available for review, related COPPAs, related products or new development projects, related submissions or regulatory processes ongoing. So really the essence of the tool and having this in PLM really is stressed in the root cause analysis, the risk analysis, and the detailing of the action plan, where you have access to the complete product definition with all specifying documents, all available records, if it's test records or maintenance records or service records, whatever they might be. And of course, you have access to drawings, the CAD models in CATIA or in SolidWorks, whatever the tool set of your choice. For action completion, at this point in time, we're going into a standard change process. And this is either done in the PLM client or through a light client on a smartphone, on a tablet, or a view-only user interface or light user interface to your PLM backbone, where you review a task, you receive your task, you review the contents in detail, and perhaps you just approve it and give your review approval. In the end, you want to make sure that everything is efficient, or that the complaints change is efficient, the CAPA has its efficiency, and that everything is closed. And you can review that in the audit trail with the complete history and IP developed in the process. So these are the different steps, and there are a few which we want to highlight in, or I'd like to highlight in the demo. It will start off with the complaints overview. We'll have a quick look at the UI for the complaints. Then we'll switch user and go into a regulatory user to see what's the user interface for the reporting. And then we'll go into different CAPAs at different stages to see how mature are they, what kind of information can we expect in the CAPA. So that's what I'd like to take you through. So let's go over to the demo environment. So this is, as you might be familiar with now, the 14x version of License to Cure, and in this case I've logged in as David, who's a quality leader, and I'm then viewing the standard view of the quality lead. In this user interface, I have an overview of all existing complaints. And what's relevant for David is, of course, to see what are the complaints, what's their respective status. Here we can see that some have been marked as urgent, some are less urgent. If I go into editing view here, it's typically the urgency and status I work with. The rest is information which is edited on the complaint in itself. Here I have functionality to initiate or create new complaints, but otherwise it's a question of trending. The trending capabilities are to some extent supported in this user interface, so I can easily filter out different complaints, view different experience codes, to do additional review of malfunctions to see what's the development over time. Or if I want to review a specific product. The details on the product from a quality leads perspective. Let's go into the one of the products here. So in this case, I'm following the product line, and I can see different versions and designs of this AED, the defibrillator, and I can see that it's these are parts of a wider product line. So the product line are a grouping of my different defibrillators, and I have different design alternatives here. Under the different models, I have products which are configured products, and let's have a look at the product information. under one particular product. So whenever I select on the product, it's displaying the product here. So this is the design we're working on in this case. And I can also navigate directly to the ongoing development project. So this is typically a product which has had its first release, and we're now in a second revision. And here we're going directly to the development project. Here we have the details as you saw last week when we reviewed the design controls. Here you have the details on the actual phase gate project with the details on the deliverables for that project and that phase, and its connection to the DHF. Additionally, under the project we have the folder structure, so we can access both the DHF and at any point in time the technical file and its contents. So it really gives us a good overview from the product line down to the model to a product, specific configuration of a product for a certain market, and then down to the technical file. So I really can see the details required from a quality perspective and see what's the impact here. If I drill down further, I can see what's the top level part and what are the control document for that specific development project. But where we'll start in our example is not in the product, but we'll start in the complaint. Under each complaint, I have the details required for that complaint. Who is my contact? What kind of correspondence have I had on the complaint? Who is working on this? If they've been assigned. So in this case, I have Helen, which is a regulatory lead. Phillips, he's a design engineer. Stephen is working in support, and Thomas is a senior design engineer. But the first focus will be on the returns and fulfillment. So here I want to make sure that I've received what I need from returns on the goods from the supplier or the customer, the end customer, so that we have a proper sample for the reporting of the complaint. And that's the information I have here. Usually I have the information on the model, of course, and that's the marketing name of the product. But if I have the connection to the top level part, and if I have serial number, I want to track that, and that of course will limit down the potential number of top level assemblies which I need to review for the analysis. So here I track the received product details and also the fulfillment and how what has actually been what was sent to the customer and what was received at our end. In order to see how this is followed in the organization, so as pointed out, we had a few different assignees who would potentially work on this, and one of them was Helen. So we will log out from the system. So Helen is a regulatory lead. So her responsibility is to evaluate complaints from a regulatory perspective. As you can see, her introduction view is on the submissions and technical files. She follows the products in very much the same as the quality engineer. But of course there will be one technical file and submission per configured product, so that's why she has that in her UI. The way she receives information on a complaint is typically through the tasks. So if she goes to the task view and let's view one of the tasks she typically would receive. And these are receives actually in her email box, I would expect. And from there, from that email, she will have a link directly into the system, and she will come into this view. In this view, she will see that she has received a task, and she will understand that. She will see that it's assigned to her. So someone has made the decision that she's the one to evaluate this. And there's an instruction, more or less detailed, and this one is fairly straightforward. If she would like to understand how is this, what does this assignment look like, she selects on the route, and that will display how is this sent through the organizations. She can see that it's been initiated by the quality lead, David, the former owner, and when done, David will receive a notice. We can see that it's routed through me as the regulatory lead, and there's also a detailed investigation performed by design engineer Thomas. And I see that he's picked up his task here. So I'll go into the detailed investigation, and under this investigation I have the actual complaint. And the design engineer has started working on this and created a complaint event suggesting that it's a malfunction. So we have more details on that, and I might want to review the history or the audit trail to get the details on what has actually been done by the design engineer. I can, of course, as regulatory lead, I also have access to the same information as the quality engineer. So I'll the typical task of the regulatory lead will be to make sure that we follow the proper reportability. So we'll focus on the one candidate for this one. Filter out those which are pointed out as urgent. And here we will find a good example on reportability. The experience code here has been reported as 1802 death. So obviously it's a serious event. What does this mean, and the capabilities I have? If I have a closer look at this one, I can see that there has been reports on this, and that comes from the derived event here, the malfunction and death. And we see that both an MDR and an MDV will be required. So reportability according to US standards and reportability according to European standards. So what we'll do is we will log out with this user and log in with the quality lead instead. What we'll view here will be the COPPAs, and we then assume that we, from the complaints, both have completed the analysis, and then also said we will request a COPPA, and it's gone to quality lead, and David here has approved that we will take this up and continue with the analysis. Just want to see if I can have a look at the adverse events reporting in this. So here it works better. In this case, what I'll do as the quality lead is I just want to understand what were the proceedings in this case. And here it's the PDF of the standard form for MDA reporting. So it's the EMDA. And we can see that it's populated with some details here. And this is, of course, provided by the system and populated by the PLM system. We can also, with an add-on module, add watermarks to files. So as long as it's in the draft stage, of course, we can add that on top of the PDF display. This was the American report, or the report for the FDA. Let's have a look at the European one. So the system comes prepared with the reports for US legislation and for European legislation. And of course, it provides the functionality for automatic and electronic reporting directly to the regulatory authorities. Okay, so as a quality lead, I would like to review the COPPAs. So let's see what we have in the system. Start looking at a first COPPA here, and it provides the different tools I need for my assessment. So initial risk assessment. In this case, I have a history on hazard analysis, and I do have the documentation in the system. It's an initial analysis has been started. If I want to understand how far we are, I'll check the life cycle. And here I can see what's the state, and this is really in an early stage. Not much has happened, so it's probably we've started off a root cause analysis, and I can see that an initial FMEA has been attached, but it's really in the plan, so it's in early stage. I can also from early see related processes, and some of these are added automatically. So I can see here that there are some material changes, which probably is derived from a previous change. I see a top-level assembly, which has been selected and attached. I can see some change actions and change orders. And all these related processes are either automatically added as proposed processes, or they are added by the design engineer as they perform, or as he or she performs her analysis. We can also see here that some parts related to a previous NCR have been added. And we can see that the trending on complaints have added a set of complaints with similar characteristics. So I have good support for reviewing this COPPA in its real contents, related to the product, related to ongoing development projects and changes. And that's really a great help for the both, of course, the risk analysis and the root cause analysis, and determining how should the actions be implemented, and what will they eventually impact. Okay, we will also have a look at more mature COPA. So let's pick out such. And as I did the last time, I can see that this one is closed. And this is also confirmed if I look at the effectivity. So here it was initially introduced from a complaint, and I can see that it's has completed in the end, and the plan is effective. If I want to understand the details on this one, what's really performed on the effectivity, I'll go into the audit trail. And this is the same audit trail as anywhere else within the license to cure portfolio. And here you can see the details, who did actually introduce the effectivity. Okay, so I hope that gives an overview on and feel for the quality functionality. So what we did was initially to look at different complaints related to this battery failure. We started up an investigation and looked at the disposition and receival of the package from the customer. We could have gone into a more detailed analysis, but we do have immediate access to the CAD files. Finally, we had a look at the MDR forms and the regulatory reporting for the complaint, and we decided to take this forward as a CAPA. An important capability is the related processes. So the CAPA will always be reviewed in its context, and depending on my role, I will have access to the complete set of related processes, whether it's changes or the product, the model, or the assembly, or detailed drawings, whatever relevant records I have. Since I have my development projects and a previous development project in this case, of course, I would like to revisit that design controls to some details and that technical file to understand what was the intended use, what was previous risk mitigations or risks, hazards and risk mitigations, and how does that is that reflected now when I have a complaint of higher urgency. So here I can perform quite detailed root cause analysis. Action completion is standard task completion in the PLM platform, either through a light user interface or through the standard user interface. And really it follows through the standard mechanisms for control documents or for change up until final completion, when I can see that the complaint and the CAPA is effective. So that's what we covered. So just a remark on the regulatory input for this. The module was, for CAPA especially, was initially developed for US legislation, but it fits very well both the ISO standard and the legislation in the US. Really stressing the availability of quality records, and to have one view on the product, the processes controlling that product, and the quality system implemented, and the quality system routines supporting the quality assurance. So that's the key intent of this functionality. So what it does, if we compare with a previous session, we said we want to introduce PLM for a global product development process and change process, and that's key motive for introducing PLM in any industry. But we also use the functionality to build compliance through product development, to build up the design controls and the DHF and the technical file with that. But what we're adding here today is that we're executing the quality processes as part of product development. So we're really building in a more detailed quality process into the product development platform. And that's done for the complaints and the CAPAs as shown here. But we also have processes for equipment service requests, inquiries, and all potential non-conformance requests to understand is this standard behavior or a non-conformance. We do have support for internal audits or supplier audits to follow up on any quality performance. There are tools for full risk analysis, FMEA or FMECA, and hazard analysis, and the tools for those according to 14971. Related will be requirements traceability and the functionality for product and materials compliance, but more on these later on. So really, the essence on any quality process is that it's connected with its specification, its development projects, all current projects, all resources and skills, so I can try out the availability of skills and resources, and they're all following the same audit trail. As you saw, we have always a connection to related processes, and that's something which is built up continuously as my CAPA matures. But we will also, since we're connected to the product, have access to future changes whenever they come up and future product definitions for related products. And most importantly, we have the whole IP, all the past history, both from the design controls, with intended use, with identified hazards and risks and risk evaluations, all the acceptance activities, all the process controls. So quite a backlog of information and background for information for the assessment. And we have this available already in the same system. So we're just building the CAPA on the top of that. And that's the whole essence. We're building in the quality processes in the PLM platform. This was a very light introduction to two of the quality processes. If you would like to know more on the processes and particular processes, please feel free to contact us. My contact details as provided before. Or if you would like to raise any questions. Let's see if there are any questions coming up. And it seems that there are no general questions on this session. Okay, so if there are no questions coming up, last session, some of you emailed questions separately, so use this email or give me a call, and we'll respond to any questions, concerns, or if you'd like to see some specific process. Then I'll look forward. So what's coming up in the next few weeks? First, this current week, there will be a regulatory forum in Stockholm in Sweden. It's arranged by the Swedish MedTech, which is the Swedish Association for Medical Device Development Organizations. And they have introduced a new annual event, which is the regulatory forum. Focus will be the new legislation coming up for Europe, and with that UDI. And there will be representatives from Philips and Elekta, for example, both from here in Stockholm, presenting at the event with both management sessions as well as technical sessions on current regulatory topics. So I can really recommend the event. We will be there. We will have a specific focus on the regulatory filing functionality. So technical files, dossiers, submissions of any kind, and of course also the MDR reporting or the vigilance reporting. We will present that, and we will also have a demonstration prepared for UDI. So if you have the possibility to visit Stockholm, it would be a pleasure to meet. And then we will show the details on regulatory filing. The next session will have a webinar is next Tuesday, and the scope will then be controlled documents, which focus on the routines for any control document. So anyone which requires formal approval, and both how we set up the routines for the SOP with recurring reviews, as well as the final approval, but also its implementation. So how we prepare and plan for training on its implementation, how the training is executed and supported, and how we follow up the implementation to make sure that the training is completed before the final release of the change. So that's the focus for next week. We will introduce the control documents. We'll probably do it together with both with and without connection to a product, and the product represented with the bill of material. Okay, with that, once more, the link to Regulatory Forum on Thursday. So it would really be a pleasure to meet. And otherwise, we will meet in this webinar session again, same time next week, Tuesday. So looking forward to that session. Then I thank you very much for attending today, and we'll close a little bit earlier. So thank you very much, and goodbye for today.